Hi, the Green Report here with 7 environmental news stories you may have missed in April 2021. A lot of pollution stories this month, so let's dive in. Number 1. Florida wastewater poses great risk of leakage. Early in April, the governor of Florida declared a state of emergency as officials detected the leak in a Piney Point Reservoir pond located in the Tampa Bay area. The pond is 25 feet deep and contains millions of gallons of water contaminated with phosphorus and nitrogen from an old phosphate plant. This led the Manatee County Public Safety Department to send out 2 evacuation notices warning of an imminent uncontrolled release of wastewater from the former fertilizer manufacturing facility. A total of 316 homes were impacted by the evacuation orders. To prevent flooding, officials are now pumping water out of the reservoir at a rate of 22,000 gallons per minute and transferring it to Port Manatee and to Tampa Bay. The waste product can also contain toxins such as arsenic, lead, and mercury. Its storage is an ongoing problem for Florida and other states, and with this, it's safe to say this is a toxic and dangerous situation for the Sunshine State. Number 2. Wisconsin wildfires. Yes, you heard that right. The state of Wisconsin is dealing with hundreds of wildfires as the Midwest state is dealing with one of its worst seasons on record. On April 5th, Governor Tony Evers declared a state of emergency, authorizing the state's National Guard to help put out the flames, prevent further damage, and make recovery efforts. The firestorms have surpassed all of last year in terms of acreage damaged. Since January, 365 wildfires have ignited, burning more than 1,500 acres. Quote, according to Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources, there are no reported fatalities so far, but the loss of 26 structures is significant, especially when it is unusually early in the springtime for fires. With certain places having snowpack melted away and below average precipitation, the fire season started 2 weeks in advance. Number 3. Atmospheric CO2 levels reach record 420 parts per million. Early in April, the globe hit another concerning record. According to a measurement taken at the Mauna Loa Observatory on the Big Island of Hawaii, the world hit 420 parts per million of atmospheric carbon dioxide. This is the first time this number had been measured as the CO2 levels in the atmosphere continued to rise. Quote, exceeding 420 parts per million of the heat-trapping gas is a concerning milestone in the human-induced warming of the planet around the halfway point on our path towards doubling pre-industrial CO2 levels. What is important to know is that the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere had continued to rise since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the 1800s, and are contributing to a warming global average temperature today. Number 4. Tropical cyclone Seroja hits Australia. After drenching parts of Indonesia and taking a unique track across the Timor Sea, Tropical Cyclone Seroja lashed Western Australia with heavy rain and strong winds. Quote, severe wind gusts of up to 105 miles per hour tore houses apart and sent debris flying all over Kalbarri, a coastal tourist town of 1,350 people in Western Australia. Authorities estimated some 70% of the town's buildings were damaged. Drone footage from the scene showed dozens of homes with their roofs ripped off, power lines were down, and roads were littered with shards of metal and other debris. Around 7:40 p.m. local time, Seroja made landfall along the coast of Western Australia between the towns of Geraldton and Kalbarri as a Category 3 cyclone. Cyclones of such intensity rarely travel this far south in Australia, and towns outside the cyclone belt are not usually built to withstand the devastating conditions. Number 5. Japan will release Fukushima water into the ocean. More pollution news comes from Japan as the government stated they will release radioactive wastewater from the failed Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean. Quote, the water will be treated before release, and the International Atomic Energy Agency said the country's plans were in keeping with international practice, but the plan is opposed by the local fishing community, environmental groups, and neighboring countries. Within hours of the announcement, protesters had gathered outside government offices in Tokyo and Fukushima. The dilemma of how to dispose of the water is 10 years in the making. In March 2011, an earthquake and tsunami in northeastern Japan killed more than 19,000 people and caused 3 of 6 reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant to melt down. This resulted in the biggest nuclear disaster since Chernobyl, and the cleanup efforts persist more than a decade later. Number 6. DDT dumping ground found in Long Beach, California. Quote, scientists have confirmed the existence of a massive DDT toxic dump site in the ocean between Long Beach and Catalina Island. Rumors of a massive chemical dumping ground have persisted in the scientific community for at least 30 years, but it wasn't until recently that local scientists confirmed the existence of a large chemical dump site in the waters of Southern California. DDT is an odorless compound that was originally developed as an insecticide during World War II. In the 1960s, the compound was found to be highly toxic to both humans and animals, with the Environmental Protection Agency now labeling it as a probable human carcinogen which can cause cancer. Continuing quote, University of California marine scientist David Valentine had made a shocking discovery as 3,000 feet below the ocean's surface, just 10 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, countless barrels of toxic waste laced with DDT were found. The newly discovered barrels had been lying hidden there since the 1940s, as experts still don't know how far-reaching the environmental damage will be, but a recent study found that 1 in every 4 adult sea lions in the region had developed cancer. And lastly, number 7, Joe Biden promises climate action. On Earth Day 2021, 40 leaders from the world's top greenhouse gas polluting nations were hosted by the Biden administration for an all-virtual summit to discuss the global climate emergency and the pathways, including individual emission reduction goals that governments must take to combat the worst impacts of climate change and the runaway destruction of the planet's natural systems. Just ahead of the gathering, President Joe Biden announced new U.S. commitments to meeting the goals set forth in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and said that the nation will now aim to reduce annual carbon output by 52% compared to 2005 levels. Continuing, quote, this is the strongest contribution yet made by any major economy in terms of the amount of carbon to be cut towards meeting the goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement of holding global heating well below 2 degrees Celsius. However, the target is not sufficient to meet the more ambitious aspiration of the Paris Agreement of limiting temperature rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as global average temperatures are already close to 1.5 degrees Celsius according to climate scientists and NOAA. And also, it should be noted that recent studies have come out about examples of the coronavirus lockdowns and the continued increase of the global average temperature even with the lockdowns. Therefore, the climate tipping points may have already been passed. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Green Report for more monthly recap videos on the environment and the climate crisis.